Welcome to Goodwood, a show about board games. Today I'm reviewing Grand Austria Hotel. Will it receive 5 stars, or does it need to go find an Airbnb to stay in instead? Grand Austria Hotel is a game for 2 to 4 players, where you play as owners of a hotel, trying to attract guests to your cafe, feeding them with food, preparing a room for them to stay in, and impressing the Emperor of Austria, who comes to visit every so often. Grand Austria Hotel is a dice selection game, and the winner is the player with the most victory points, denoted by this yellow symbol. Victory points are gained in many ways, but you get a lot of them by successfully lodging a guest in your hotel. You also get points for going up the Emperor track, completing patterns of filled rooms in your hotel, and you also get victory points for whatever money and food you have left over at the end. The core game is like this. You choose a guest to invite to your cafe. You feed them with the food and drink that they desire, as shown in the top left of their card. You prepare a room of the correct colour for them to stay in, and then you place them in the room, gaining you the benefits on their card, which often includes victory points. Each guest has their own peculiarities. For example, this lady only wants to drink wine and coffee, and will only accept being placed in a yellow room. And once she's finally retired back to her hotel room for the night, you get the perks on her card. For example, this actress lets you flip an extra room to become occupied. So how do you prepare rooms, food, and drink for the guests? That's where the dice come into play. The game consists of 7 rounds, and in each round, all the dice are rolled. Each player then takes it in turns to select a die and carry out the action linked with the value on the die. Die faces 1 and 2 get you food and drink for your guests. Strudel, cake, wine, and coffee. Die face 3 helps prepare another room in your hotel. Die face 4 allows you to get more money or go up the Emperor track. Die face 5 lets you hire a new member of staff, bagging you some kind of short or long-term advantage. And die face 6, well, we'll get back to that. Grand Austria Hotel is interesting because each action is limited by the number of dice in each pool. For example, 3 dice in dice pool 1 allows you to take 3 food cubes, and 5 dice in dice pool 5 reduces the cost of a played staff card by 5 money. Equally, no dice in a pool means you can't take that action that round. That is, unless you choose from dice pool 6. I told you I'd get back to it. Dice pool 6 is a wild card and allows you to spend 1 money to repurpose these dice as if they were any other action. So, on your turn you choose a die and the corresponding action to carry out. The rest of your turn can be spent doing minor actions such as feeding your guests and putting them in rooms if you're able to. There is also the Emperor track, shown here. At the end of round 3, 5 and 7, the Emperor comes to visit your hotel, and you get victory points according to how far up the track you've managed to get. You also get penalised or rewarded if you end up in the black or gold areas respectively. So what do I like about Grand Austria Hotel? It's quite an interesting way of utilising dice in a game. Not only do you have to take into account what action you need at any time to gain the most points, but you have to take into account the number of dice in each pool. One interesting option that is always available to you in the game is to simply pass. You don't have to take a die, and once everyone has passed, one of the dice is removed, and the rest are re-rolled. Say you really need to go up the Emperor track, or you just really need some more money, but there's no dice available for that action. Passing and hoping for a lucky re-roll may be exactly what you need. Another thing I like is the theme. Not all of it makes sense. For example, the whole idea of the Emperor visiting feels a bit pasted on, but otherwise I think it's a really cute theme. Unfortunately, I do have a lot of problems with the game that I couldn't ignore despite how much I wanted to love it. The core cycle of attracting, feeding and lodging guests feels very repetitive. The Emperor track is dull, with no branch points or choices to be made apart from go higher up on it. The choice between picking a die or passing and hoping for a lucky reroll just doesn't feel like an interesting decision ultimately. Very often it's clear which actions you need this round, and then the choices often are dictated by how many dice there are, and this feels slightly suffocating. Your strategy isn't guided by the dice selection, it just feels limited by them. The element of luck, with how the dice roll, falls flat for me in a game where we're encouraged to strategize and plan, especially when the game has 3 global objectives revealed at the beginning of the game for everyone to work towards for extra victory points. Other issues include, the font on the staff cards is hard to read, and the iconography is not the most intuitive, requiring many references to the rulebook. The staff cards are actually similar to the occupation and minor improvement cards in Agricola. In Agricola I love the cards, but in Grand Austria Hotel The staff cards are not particularly interesting or game changing. But worst of all for me, Grand Austria Hotel has little to no interaction. I know some people like to be doing their own thing in a board game, and for those of you, you probably want to try this out, but I really struggle with the lack of direct competition. It doesn't feel like you're designing and creating an elaborate hotel. It just feels like a long cycle of invite guest, feed guest, put them in a room, and keep going over and over again until the game thankfully ends. Ultimately, there's no room in the inn for Grand Austria Hotel in my collection. I've decided that Castles of Burgundy is a much more satisfying dice selection game with more freedom. But if you like the idea of Grand Austria Hotel, or you just want to look into similar titles, I'd recommend the Marco Polo series of games, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, Coimbra, or Stefan Feld titles such as Hamburg. Thanks for watching. Goodwood is not sponsored by any board game company, and all games are purchased by myself. If you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe to the channel by clicking on the Goodwood logo you can see on the screen now.